We had a flurry of announcements from the Liberal government yesterday. They're in a 3-day retreat in Halifax right now, potentially with a cabinet shuffle, although no news today on that. The news came from the government's announcement yesterday on limiting the number of low-wage temporary foreign workers who come into Canada. Randy Boissonault is Canada's Federal Minister of Employment. He is on the line. Mr. Boissonault, thank you for being here today.
Aaron, always a pleasure.
Yeah, listen, I have to ask because I'm seeing reaction today, and perhaps it's not surprising, from people in the business community across the country, particularly small businesses, questioning whether this was a good decision, whether it's warranted. So why, in your opinion, is it?
So it is warranted. And look, if we look at the numbers, Aaron, when we came out of the pandemic, we had about 1 million job vacancies. And, the chambers of commerce and business associations were asking us to, use the temporary foreign worker program for what it was designed to do, which is to flex with the economic reality of the time. And that's what we did. And so when I became Minister of Jobs, we had 30% ability to, your workforce could have up to 30% temporary foreign workers. And then we started to see a change. And so now we're at the point where we've got about 500,000 vacancies across the country, and unemployment's gone up. It's gone up from 5.3% to 6.4%. I'm seeing youth unemployment at 13.5%, newcomer employment at 12%, which is double what everybody else is experiencing. And so it's time that we make sure that people aren't over-relying on the temporary foreign worker program and that turning to Canadians, the people who live here already, to take those jobs. And so if that means that we're going to have to pay a little bit more, perhaps, to bring people into those jobs, that's what's going to take place. Aaron, I'm 54 now, and I remember in Morinville, Alberta in the 1980s, my first job as an IGA stock boy, making $3.85 an hour. And then I moved over to the gas station. I was probably making $5 2 years later. And that's how I paid for, part of my first semester in university. So this is about Canadian jobs. It's about making sure people who are here get those jobs. And it's also about making sure that our businesses are focusing on paying a good wage and investing in their businesses. So
can you quantify, when you read and when people hear low-wage temporary foreign workers, what does low-wage qualify at? Below the minimum level of jobs in that or wages in that particular province?
It's a great question. It's the median wage for that area. But look, we're talking $15 to $17 an hour, and it might be the reality that it actually takes $18 or $20 if you're going to want a Canadian or somebody who's already living here to take those jobs. And so I have seen in some particular occupations, wage suppression taking place. And the other thing is, I started to see, I'll give you an example, Aaron. We're talking cooks, we're talking food service counters, we're talking some retail jobs, but then I started to see admin assistants. You can't tell me that there aren't enough people in downtown Montreal right now to take admin assistant jobs or to go be the food counter people at the local fast food restaurant or at the local inn or the hotel. And so it's time that people turn and look at home for these jobs and to look at the labor pool that I know is there, because I'm seeing it in the unemployment numbers.
So is the contention that there are workers, or at least that there are owners of businesses taking advantage of these people?
No, it's not to take advantage of things, because, look, the tools were there, right? And they asked us for the tools when there was 1 million job vacancies, and now we're at half of that. Now, if you want to look at the temporary foreign worker program writ large, and I can come back and talk about this, about 85,000 out of the 250,000 are seasonal agricultural workers. And then we've got the low-wage stream, we've got the high-wage stream, a permanent resident stream, and a global talent stream. If there are abuses in the system, my job is to weed them out. It's our job as a government and provincial government to get those bad actors out of the system. And I've made it very clear in March and in August that there's going to be more compliance measures. What I also told the media yesterday, and I'll share it with you today, is I've asked the department to go do a full cost analysis of this program, which means that the fees to actually apply for a labor market impact assessment to get a temporary foreign worker in will go up. And I've got 90 days to take a hard look at the high wage stream and then come back. And if there's any changes I can make to that to reduce the number of temporary foreign workers that come in through that stream, I'm going to make those changes too.
So it's low wage and high wage. You announced one, but you're looking at both.
You got it.
Okay. What about the idea of permanent residency? There was a hint yesterday that would be discussed, and there might be some information coming. What can you tell us today?
So the permanent resident piece is what Minister Miller and I are working on what we call the levels plan for Canada, and it's about taking a look at the at the comprehensive picture of immigration, right? So it's not just like this year it's 485,000 newcomers that will be able to have access to permanent residency. We also want to talk about the 2.4 million temporary residents who are here, of which 250,000 come in my program, but we're talking international students, we're talking Ukrainian refugees, we're talking the spouses that get visas to come and be with people who get a visa to work here. And so we're going to work as a government. We're going to come back to Canadians with a comprehensive levels plan this fall, and that will also be clear then to the world and to Canadians who will have access to how many permanent residence lots there will be in over the next 3 years.
So let me ask you this. One of the criticisms from business is the fact that this is being treated as a global issue. In other words, when I say global, national for as far as Canada is concerned. In other words, maybe Toronto, maybe Montreal, maybe Vancouver, you've seen those unemployment or the employment rates grow, but it's not the same across the country. So how can you treat the whole country the same way?
So I'm really glad you asked this question because, look, I could have taken out a sledgehammer and I was much more surgical than that. So one of the things that I did is I had the choice to apply this to what are known as economic regions, which is the country is broken up into 60-some economic regions for employment insurance. But there was another tool that I could use, which is known as the census metropolitan area. And so those are the larger centers, like Montreal, like Gatineau, Quebec, like Edmonton, Calgary, other centers. And what this means is that the 6% unemployment rate is not going to apply to areas outside of the CMA. So you're talking rural and remote Canada, where maybe that temporary foreign worker is the difference between that inn, that auberge, staying open or not. And that's where the local restaurant is, and that's where they actually make sure that the local workers have a place to stay. I've been very careful. Meat processing, for example, I made sure there was an exemption for meat processing. I don't want any upward pressure on food prices. And construction and seniors care, I'm making sure that we don't have any effect there because, we're building 4 million homes, and I don't want any senior to go without care in this country.
Do you not think, though, by the same reasoning that you're going to see an upward increase as far as, food, when you say food prices, say in fast food, if suddenly you're going to go from paying someone $15 or $16 an hour to $18 to $20 an hour?
I have every confidence in smart Canadian business owners to have the right balance between paying their workers more and automating. I'll give you an example. It was a choice made maybe 10, 15 years ago in the fish processing sector in the East Coast to either let it all go because nobody wanted to produce fish. Like, it's hard work, right? So there was a combination of having a smaller number of workers, but more automation in those plants. And it is now a $6 billion industry. There are people working in that industry, combination of people plus, robots and automation. I'm not saying that at every fast food restaurant you're going to see a robot counter operator, but there are smart business owners that know how to do both. And we are 42% behind the United States in productivity, Aaron. And so the only way to close that gap is for our businesses to invest more in their people and more in their businesses.
Let me ask you one last thing, because this has come up here in Quebec recently, I think just within the past week or so, and I know you're part of that discussion. You had met with Quebec representatives about what they want to do with temporary foreign workers. Students is part of the issue here. So my understanding is there are more than 40% of the total number of non-permanent residents here who are students. There has been, you talk about businesses taking advantage perhaps of some people coming in. It seems some institutions here have taken tremendous advantage of those applying for student visas and using that as a way to get into the country. What are you doing about that?
We're shutting it down. We've got a cap now across the country, and that'll be part of that levels plan that I talked to you about. And we're going to go from what is about 6.5% of Canada's population being temporary residents to 5%. That is a significant reduction. We're talking several 100,000 people a year that simply won't be able to come into the country anymore. And Minister Miller and I and other ministers will be presenting that plan to Cabinet. But it's real. And look, some universities, some colleges, private colleges, got a little bit too eager about having international students come and get being paid differential fees higher than what domestic students would pay. And so we're turning the taps off that too.
Last question, because it's fair to ask about criticism here. Many people now looking at this suggesting, it's all well and good that the Liberals are now doing something about this, but kind of the old, the adage is they got us into this mess in the first place. What do you say to that?
The program was designed to flex. Look, there was another option, right? Coming out of the pandemic, we could have said no. We could have said, we're just going to keep the temporary foreign worker program at the 10%, and then we would have seen a lot of businesses fail. And so part of having a program like this that's designed to flex like an accordion is You let out the accordion when you need to, and then you bring the accordion back in when you need to. So we flexed the accordion out to get the economy back and 1.3 million jobs back on track after the pandemic. And now I'm seeing a change in the unemployment. I'm also seeing a change in who's taking, who has access to the local jobs. And so it's time to close the accordion again, and that's what we're doing.
Interesting analogy. All right, Minister, I thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron. Take care.
Randy Boissonault, Canada's Minister of Employment. There you go. That's the explanation the government's using right now. We'll see how this squares with independent businesses. They're not all on board, obviously, with this idea because the smaller the business, I guess, the more this tightening of the temporary foreign workers, the rules, is going to hurt.